Okay, so the first step in finding a leak in a tire is to put it into the tire tub, let everything settle down, and we are going to rotate the tire very slowly once it's settled, looking for bubbles. And those bubbles might actually be, depending on the size of the leak, extremely small. Make sure you always remove the valve cap to expose the valve core, because it could in fact be the core that's leaking. And I don't see anything, but because it's a rubber valve and there's the potential for rust or sealing issues around that valve, I'd like to reach in there and wiggle it a little bit, make sure I don't see any bubbles. This particular tire has a fairly large leak, so I'm confident once we get it in the right spot, we are going to be able to find it. And right now you can see a large mass of bubbles coming out of what appears to be the rim. And unfortunately, there are some rim designs that have a captive area to collect water. And if they sit for long periods of time, whether it's salt or corrosion or just accumulation of water, it can actually rust right through the rim. And that is what's wrong with this, is the rim is actually compromised and leaking and will require replacement. So we have a puncture in this tire, and there was nothing in the puncture, but putting air in it and rotating it through our dunk tank, I could see where the air was leaking. So the first step of the process is to probe it and make sure that there's nothing inside there, and it makes the hole a little more visible from the inside. I've marked it on the outside, and because I need to take this off the rim to patch it on the inside, and I don't want to have to rebalance the tire, I'm going to mark the weight and I'm going to mark the valve, so I will put it back together in the same spot. So at this point, I'm going to remove the tire from the rim. Okay, so now that the tire's off the rim and I probed the hole, you can see it clear. And I also take my hand and I do a sweep inside the tire and a visual to make sure there's no other things protruding through the tire, and I'm going to prep that for a patch. So the first step of the process, I'm going to put a little of this rubber prep in there, and I am going to use what we call the cheese grater, if you will, I am removing the silicone that's on the inside of the tire and cleaning the liner. Tires are coated so they don't stick to the mold, but in order for the patch to stick, I need to make sure I'm dealing with a clean surface that's lightly scuffed, and the area has to be slightly bigger than the patch I'm going to put on. So after the area is roughed up adequately, we make sure we use some of this rubber prep solve, and we're going to wipe it clean to remove any of the silicone or greases that might be associated with the repair that would keep the patch from sticking. We take our rubber cement and we're going to coat an area slightly bigger than the patch we are going to use. And the next step is to let the glue completely dry, and then we will apply the patch.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
So the next step is to actually apply the patch, and I'm being very careful not to touch the back with my fingers, because the oils that are on my hands will affect whether or not the patch adheres properly. So now I center it. And I'm going to use the roller to ensure I have a good bond. And I just go over it multiple times in multiple directions. And when I'm all done rolling it, I will peel the plastic back to check to make sure it's properly adhered to the tire. So after we roll it, we just grab the plastic, peel it, and the patch should stick nicely. And we have a good chemical bond and the air pressure holding it in place.
for this?
Okay, so after we've identified the culprit and removed it, same procedure as before. We will remount the hole, mark it so we know where it is, remove the tire from the rim, and inspect it from inside. It is a fairly large hole, and I have to make a decision because I have quite a few patches in my arsenal, and in this case I'm going to use what's referred to as a plug patch. I'm going to use this because at the same time I am plugging the hole, I am patching it on the inside. So this is the recommended repair by Rubber Manufacturers Association. The process begins with cleaning an area slightly larger than the patch as we did previously. So now that the glue is dry, we're ready to insert the patch. I'm going to put a little glue on the stem just to make it easier to pull it through the hole. I'm careful not to touch the patch with my fingers so I don't get no oil on it. So you pull the stem through. I can cut off the excess, and then I would roll the patch just like I would a conventional patch to make sure I have good coverage and adhesion. And that's what we refer to as a patch plug. Okay, so in this particular clip, I want to show you changing a rubber valve stem. This is not a tire monitor. This is just a conventional rubber valve stem. And keep in mind that whenever you're replacing tires, you should also be replacing valve stems because over time the rubber tends to decomposition just like a tire does. So the first step, we're going to remove the old valve stem. Usually, easy way to do that is just to have the tire off the rim, cut the back side of the valve, and pull it through the rim. Once we've done that, I'm going to select a new tire valve, and they come in different lengths, so depending on the rim, that's going to make the decision as to what length tire valve I'm going to put in there. You also want to make sure that you're not putting too long a tire valve in there that could get caught up in deep snow or mud and rip the valve out of the rim. I'm going to put a little seal around the valve because it is a steel rim and there is potential there for rust that would cause a leak. So I put a little seal around there and I use the install tool, thread it on like you would a valve cap. And there are notches in that tool that I am going to put up against the side of the rim and use that to leverage the tire valve into the rim.
We can't trip the bar, we just move with the flow.
And at this point it's seated and it should make a good seal. And we are ready to install the tire.